the ancient world are two. Just put two, because everything, positive and negative. Is the way ancient ones of our forefathers, i.e., violating some of our own principles, and the hybrid or Germanic tribes overthrowing a peaceful people. As you see, war, or what you would call the respect for life, is a part and has always been a part of African Asiatic culture. And whereas in the nature of general operations, one of the principles of civilization is the keeping of your word, or the honor, the moral integrity of structure and of agreement, or what you call contract. One of the keys to the operative construction of de facto operations at Midgard has been those who chose to take the exact opposite and be what you call bloodletters or bloodshedders, coming as men of peace, but actually deceiving and practicing war. So you have two different characters of operations in nature. That is not to misrepresent or to say that those of our ancient mothers and fathers did not do what you would call less than honorable things, so you understand. But the nature of the civilization principles of the ancient Lemurians, Canaanites, Moabites, based on the operations of cosmic order and the observations and maintenance of the divine laws of nature as a construct, and the order of government, knowing that via that preservation of those principles, you have longevity in civilization. Absolutely, you have what you call karmic collapse, or you would say the principle of reaping what you sow is often referred to as cause and effect, destruction. Much of what you see now. But again, this is again why sometimes when we're going over the problems of humanity at Midgard, particularly in these days, in your more contemporary times, we will remind the people to recognize some of the symbolisms that are in their native original Edamon nature of operation. As an example, Hela, or the eagle, it does mean ruler or overseer, because it actually symbolizes spirituality, because the Hela can look into the sun. Because remember, the nature and the culture and customs of the ancient Canaanite Moabite nation is what you would call the eye, or the people of the eye. And that is the seven senses. So when you deal with the five senses, you also have intuition and insight. Now, when they are conjoined as one, then you get the eye, what they call the eye of Horus, or the one seeing, or the all-seeing eye. Now, when or the divine eye of providence. After the Napoleonic Wars and the captive of the last of the Moabite popes, because originally the Vatican is actually originally African. People don't know that history because that's written out. It's particularly since 1863. And so you have Roma and you have Rome.
Give us a difference.
All right, Roma is pre Napoleon. Rome, that's Roma, and Roma, pre-Napoleon. Rome, post-Napoleon. And this is where, like, when those who are more honest about history will tell the truth as to why they use Napoleon as you might say, as a reference point. But you understand that these are Roman armies in general. Went around the world shooting the noses and all identifiable constructive aspects of the ancient world off of statues and temples. They blow temples up, destroy ancient papyri, etc. And that was the beginning of them reconstructing history, not just in reconstruction in North America. That's where that pattern has its origin. As an example, Aquila, or like you see in Iberia, where you see the double-headed eagle with the crown. That means the two sides of the brain, the left and the right side of the brain, and the cognizance of it in one bird. And the bird is one of the few of the species that can look directly into the sun and not be blinded, and also can turn its head 190 degrees, which is why you see the double-headed eagle. That's ancient Iberia, or what people assume to be today only, and this is a misrepresentation, the hybrid Germanic tribes in Germany is actually ours. So, and this is again when you deal with the true European, or we call Iberians, and why the dark priesthood and the scholars never talk about the fact that Europe is Phoenicia, i.e. Iberia, and that it's actually the extension of North Africa or the peninsula. And so in order to reconstruct history, they steal the history and kill off the Aboriginal people, i.e. the Picts, the Maoris, and the Dubs, and hide that history, particularly since the mid-1800s, just as they do in North America. And so as the people are presented with the history, many of our people will reject European history, not knowing it themselves, reject the knowledge of why we would have eagle feathers in our turbans and in our fezzes, which symbolize divinity or the ethereal world, symbolic. And also because particularly the Maghreb is also known as the temple of the moon and sun. So North America is referred to as the temple of the moon and sun. That's the culture. And of course, this is again when you hear these terms in the social engineering of the hybrid Europeans trying to separate Egypt from Africa. They not only mean Egypta on that side, they actually mean Egypt of the West, the Maghreb, or North America, and the truth of the connection of the two cultures, including to Yucatan, North, South, and Central North America, and including the true history of Hammurabi Bey and Hagar, who ruled Central America, yet they have a grave for Hagar at Mecca. But that's why they don't teach that history together. And also the matriarchy, which is an extension of the high court or the high house of the pharaohs, which is actually a matriarchy. And of course, from that comes the monarchy. And from the monarchies being overthrown is actually, in its truth, Africa and Asia, and the matriarchy structure of government being overthrown. And of course, that's given a negative too, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
Well, yes.
From a standpoint of, though, going back to subject matter of intuition, what has happened to us to disconnect us from, or has anything occurred?
It's an artificial construct. This is what we're also established. Remember with the and as we've talked this many times, this is not new, meaning that because basically the truth, like we talked about before, has no versions. It's just simply what it is, and we're giving synopsis because that's all you can give. Synopsis, basically, of the chronology, the history, what got us to where we are today, what are the motivations of the parties in controversy in relationship to the conquest of nations, as described in the Torah, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Bible, in the Pentateuch, in Septuaginta, etc. Or the battles of nations, and why the dark priesthood have been suppressing the issue of nationality, distinguished from what they refer to themselves as under the Inquisition operations as the God of this world, or owners of the globe, or globalists, right? And why they've been killing off the Aboriginal people and then trying to claim Midgard, the earth. And of course, all the dynamics in between. And then, of course, things that are practiced now called censoring or demonetizing, blocking out, killing people's communications accounts are relative to indexus librorum expurgatorius and indexus librorium prohibitorum, which are known also but misrepresented as the great Christian book burners, because they're not Christians, they're Constantinians hiding behind Christianity. And one of the things that the dark priesthood have always done is that they've always practiced, and this is another way to use your superconscious mind to start looking at things through your gut, your heart, and your mind and your head, and conjoin them in order to empower yourself to intuit things, because that's why they don't teach you about that sense, because they know when you go there, you'll start solving problems in all of the idol god systems and all of the de facto government systems that people have put their faith in, including all of the fiat instrumentalities that's created to support these constructs, will in fact collapse, often known as the apostasy, also known as Armageddon, also known as the dying of the old world, of corruption of Satan, and the coming again of the Christ, or the crystallized mind, or the activation of Horus, or the eye, or the Cyclops, or the third eye activity, or the sixth sense, or at least minimally the fifth dimension, or sometimes referred to as the higher planes of life, all representing that same principle, or the anointing of the head with oil, also the ascension, also the kundalini, all symbolize humanity evolving into minimally the higher side of the fourth dimension, which also all things made manifest that shoot through the earth, including the transference of negative energy also, and the capacity to make that discernment so that we can go into the higher planes of light qualified to come out of this bubble kind of thing, or the suppression that has been what is demonstratively referred to as the encasement in hell,
the matrix
of yes,
yeah.
of us,
right?
Because it's really us being put in the underground chambers of the church, but not the real church, the church of Satan, but not Satan is also misrepresented too. We're going to say that right now. We won't go into that right now. But those who have claimed the Lucifer to have the light, but they're really angels of the dark. That's who's been operating here. The other issue is, so hell is really the executor's chamber. We went through this before.
Right.
So the people, it's not a place to go. It's really those who have not been paying off the de facto taxes to the harlot known as the false queen. That would be represented by both the Queen Columbia, that is politically seated at the District of Columbia at Washington, dealing with the principle of manual, or the rewritten hand, dealing with the hands of man, 10 fingers, and so they represent 10 square miles, representing the 10 fingers, or representing the reconstructing of history and the reconstruction of proper government into a de facto platform known as the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., and regulated by the artificial or the substitute queen at the land of Angles, or Ingla land, i.e., District of London, or the City of London, which of course you already know, those three stars that the flag that they fly at Washington, representative of the overthrow of the republic that is derived from Muslim law, that is derived from Saba principles, that's derived from Hermetic law, that's represented in what they would call the city of brotherly love, which is the first principle of the pentastar, or what's called a pentagram, which is the symbol of man, etc., and of Anael, or Freya, or Freya, or Friday, etc., or Venus. And that is the pentagram. That's why they even present the pentagram as a negative, when actually it's the sign of man. And as man stands, you'll
You've
see
seen
man
them.
stand like this in a circle, and you have arm, leg, leg, arm, head, Allah forward, Allah backwards, coming from the womb of woman. Therefore, Muslim is not a belief system, it's simply the fetus of all product of the womb. And of course, Allah symbolizes the feminine principle. It's not some guy sitting with a turban on a throne where everybody goes salami baloney. So don't buy into that. That's not to condemn people who have been taught the anthropomorphic aspect. You understand? It's just telling you the truth of the real culture here that's been misrepresented. Because everything that's presented is also misrepresented. And keep in mind, you're dealing with what the duality of aspects. As another example, to really reclaim the honor of your mothers and fathers, you must present yourself in proper person. You can't represent yourself because that's the dead. This is why you will always see whenever there's a controversy of a state, they have told the people or trained the people that they need for a hybrid European of the Sadducees and Pharisees to represent them. At that time, you've given them your birthright because a liberated man or a liberated woman presents himself, never represented. This is why they would make the statement that anyone who seeks to represent themselves in a court is a fool. Because that means they don't understand what represent means. Represent means, like, for instance, if you show me some of these pictures back here where I might see you, that's a representation. What happens if it starts talking? So when you have another man or woman represent you and you start speaking, you're in contempt. Because you just said that you're cardboard, you're a poster, you're a picture, you're an abstract, you're not real, you're a prima facie, you're a semblance, as distinguished from that which is real, thus you're colored. So you have no right to speak. Therefore, they claim your estate, and they've been robbing us ever since. This body of Sadducees and Pharisees, they have created all the constructs and instruments by which the birthright of man have been stolen, including the marriage certificate, including the birth certificate, including other instrumentalities. So back to the cognates that we're presenting this aspect of the superliminal to get the people cognate of the conscious mind, subconscious mind, and the superconscious mind. Thus, this lesson in the superliminal.
Someone asked the question, if you could touch on, since we're talking about intuition, the Akashic realm, the Akashic records.
The same thing.
Akashic records.
So the deal of is the Akashic record that we're looking up as the energy field that surrounds Midgard. That same energy is connected to your gut. See, this is why it's not taught, because we keep reaching out when it's actually within.
Right.
Thinking there's a disconnect. The field of energy, as an example, the field, like, say for instance, like, because this is the deal also. When you're more cognate, see, because it operates anyway. The deal of it is to recognize when it's operating. As an example, a mother. This is the most perfect example. And even with children, small children, who haven't been contaminated by the social engineering of society. You can, as an example, a mother can have a baby and bring a baby in the presence of other people, right? Now, there's two aspects of these reactions. The baby may cry or get nervous because they're not familiar with some of these other beings. That's one aspect.
Right.
Another aspect, they may be picking up negative energy from one of these beings. They're not contaminated with belief systems yet. Right now, that is their gut brain acting. When you see children, as soon as they start becoming aware of themselves to some degree, right? And you start seeing them express themselves, in different ways, and you start seeing signs of their personalities, and you see expressions in their eyes because they start transmitting communications through their eyes. You know, because remember, we're all um, we're all what you would call transmitting beings. We receive and we emit energies. It is that line of energy where actual communications are transferred without speech. It's semi-lost because we have fallen so far. However, that's the nature of our being. The interesting thing, because small babies are not yet in the physical form sophisticated enough to use the body, does not totally mean that the mind is not cognitive. They're trying to exercise this body. But at the same time, there's that subtle communication that the mother and the child has from the door. It's just that we often don't pay attention to it. But they talk all the time. Children talk to the mother with small sounds, or even with eye contact, movement of the body, and the mother does it with the child too. But often, because that's not noted or studied, we take it for granted that communication is only with sound and voice. That's really the intuitive mind, or the conjoining of the heart, brain, the gut brain, and the cranial brain projecting. And that projection is the intuitive mind, superliminal. Cognizance of it is where some of your so-called more spiritual powers can be executed. But if they get you not to, or to artificially suppress this from childhood, which is what they've been doing, they've actually been vampiring or stealing your power. That is one of the motives as to why the priesthood created the sectal systems of dogmata that have been misrepresented as religion for centuries. Pit the human family against each other while they rule with their demonism, and then hide behind the names Jesus, God, Allah, Moses, Zikra, Confucius, Buddha, etc., when actually they themselves are angels of the dark. This is the other reason why whenever they're doing things, one of the things that you want to do to study them, or to study the politics and the corruption that's on the planet Earth, always usually look at their operations of what is known as projection. They will always do things in somebody else's name. And then when the evil is found out, they'll point to someone else or some other nation. But I suggest that you never go for that. As an example, if the hybrid Europeans, as an example, tell you that China, as an example, as a nation state, is doing something to the people at North America, guarantee it's not Chinese. Guarantee you it's some hybrid Europeans who have been occupying aspects of Chinese governmental structures since the Opium Wars, and who have been transferring both technology, machinery, and industry to China to control other peoples and nations. And whenever they do a negative, they blame the Chinese people, when in fact it's not coming from the Chinese people. It's coming from some persons who we will not name at this time, but you would know who they are if you did a little bit of research. They always do projection. So put that on your list of study. The word projection. They always do things in other people's names. Also, they duplicate and do less of what you would consider as creation. Most of what they do would be to take something that already exists, steal it, and corrupt it, and then take credit for it. Meaning that every modern so-called invention that's accredited to a hybrid European, 99% of the time did not come from them. It is stolen ancient technology from ancient Yucatan and Africa that already existed, that they stole from the Library of Luxor at Hiccuta for Central America and hid the books, and then studying the books with their scholars, and then taking different aspects and back engineering and taking credit for disciplines that they had absolutely nothing to do with. That's a fact. Another reason for that is so that they can rule the world and rule the heirs of Midgard who have been subdued and bubbled, as you might say. And so, and back to the question of how do we get to where we are, this is where much is concerned about indexus librorum expurgatorius. Expurgatorius is destruction. Prohibitoris is hiding or denial. Prohibitorum is expressed now with censoring, like on internet, Facebook, etc., whereas the cognizance of man is rising, not just because of what appears to be the political atmosphere, but is actually the transference of the earth into the futon belt, which we've talked about for years, and coming into another energy field, and also with the energies of the sun, and this being his temple of the sun and moon, going into what you would call a resting period, but actually expelling some purifications at the same time, getting its energy from what is known as the black sun that is in a hole that activates its field. And by them being, for the most part, embodied in a recessive manifest, they are subject to destruction of, or deterioration of the nervous system and the problematic references of the UV rays of the sun on its effect of the sebaceous glands that causes what we call leprosy in the Bible, or cancer, skin cancer. The hybrid Europeans embodying the dark side mostly in the recessive bodies, not in all, it's not limited to them, but predominantly are trying to block out the sun because of the ascension. Ascension also means progression of the equinoxes, etc. And so the energy field or the purifications that's taking place on the earth, they're trying to block it by blocking out the sun. And they're also crisscrossing. Yes, they are. So you need to know all of this is relative. However, for the Aboriginal people on the planet, a cognizance of the superliminal mind will aid in your intentions with honor to begin aiding yourself and others in the liberation of humanity from the dark priesthood, or what you would call the demons. Because the demons is not some red guy in under the ground. It's from hybrid Europeans who have been under the unum sanctum operations, and for quite some time, about 1,400 years, ruling the world, getting to the point of having the capacity to contaminate and to rule the world in an absolute de facto platform. That's the truth.
Comments.
Oh, and also, Dr. Nigel, it is to present the cognizance, whereas the people and why the people have been always taught that the incorporeal world and the corporeal world are separated. You don't worry about the corporeal world because you're going to deal with the spirit. Yeah, right. Spirit is breath, but the incorporeal world is the abstract. You get the point, meaning the unseen.
Which is just as real.
It is
it's
the
more
real.
So real.
It is the real.
Right, more so real than actually.
Corporeal and incorporeal. Yes. But continue.
No, I'm just saying the part that we have been encouraged to stay away,
to dismiss,
and or leave to the
to the priesthood
to interpret or tell you how much of it that
you've been pulling us into the pits of hell, the executor's chamber, and thus that's the origin of tithe tax. That's what tithe is. It's a tax.
Right.
They've been draining your energies, and they've been using it to destroy nations. Thus, the fiat, thus the blind faith are absolutely connected. Yes, they are.
Right. And I want to say something, because you don't get a chance to see the chat and what necessarily what's going on and so
let
forth.
them know that, because I think because a lot of times as I'm traveling, people will expect me to respond to some of the questions, and as you already know, that I don't have direct access to the chat.
Right. So you don't. But one of the things I want to bring out, and for those to whom it applies will know and know what I'm talking about. I see so much divisiveness and negativity at times coming from individuals within the chat. And it's mainly because either they don't understand where somebody's coming from, or they don't like where someone's coming from, which they perfectly have a right not to and not to. But I feel that this is one of the reasons why we have been so easily overthrown. The divisiveness that has been able to infiltrate
us. That's a tort response. Keep that in mind.
Right, because like I said, everybody is not right and everybody's not wrong, but there somehow seems to be a disconnect when one more can just kind of desecrate another more because they don't agree with them.
The new old.
Right, it's the end, but it's the energy. It is the energy that is being spewed out, the venom that's coming out of about. There might be some of among us who may not be on exactly on the right path, but there's a way without seeming like you are the executioner, you the judge, jury, and the executioner, and I need everybody else to get on board with me. I'm saying this to whomever thinks that you get my attention, because I'm the one looking at the chat. I'm not going to respond to negativity, and if it gets too out of line, that's why I'm going to put up respect the chat. And if the people don't see that need to see that they need to respect the chat, I will block you, because this is a place for education, information, confirmation. This is not a place, we can take some stuff offline. You can email us, but this is not the place for the negativity and the fighting. This is a place of unity. And I needed to say that.
All right. Now, this is important. And as you already know, Dr. Naomi, over the years, I don't let that energy bother me. Number one, I got alligator skin. Number two, I remember when we talked about a couple of years ago, it's not new, but we talked about all masks are off.
Yes.
You got to remember, as knowledge is being exposed that starts liberating people, other people who have been controlling other groups of people are threatened, because the enlightenment that people receive by starting to think on the multiple levels, they liberate themselves from opportunists who've been having their hands in their pockets, in the people's pockets, or what is known in the Bible as stealing the widow's pennies. And when you inform people and they start exercising some of these things, they begin to find them to be true. Again, why often, Dr. Neal, you'll hear me say to the people, don't accept what I'm saying. Do research. And for others who are critics, I may say, I'm not arguing with you, don't argue with me, prove me wrong.
Well,
and in doing so, for themselves, if a being is being honest, they will find this information because it's available to anyone.
Right.
For those who are less than honest, they're threatened because they've been used to, when you study most institutions, churches, mosques, synagogues, temples, governmental organizations, other clubs, etc., they pretty much have had what you call dominant control over the people, including having their hands in their pockets, where people have been on a regular basis donating financially their services, their time, and have been taking the positions of little boys and girls or children or a flock of sheep, not thinking for themselves, unable to solve problems, weak-minded, not respecting that their divine mother gave them keys in themselves when they were formulated into that fetus and brought to the earth plane, given tools that have been artificially suppressed, and they think they have no power, and people who have been what you call administering the club's dogma systems have become what you call wealthy, very comfortable, very well taken care of at the expense of the poor and the widow's pennies by perpetrating misrepresented religion, misrepresented, that's called dogma, a mixed truth with falsehood, and have been loath for people to find out that the intuitive mind is actually a defense mechanism given by nature. As an example, you know how, like, say, for instance, you can go into you can, whether it's day or night, you can be going into an area where you run among people, or some people can pass you, and you can see in their eyes without expressing whether they're smiling or not, whether that person is negative.
Yeah, no, but
that's the intuitive mind. It's not this brain. It is the gut mind and the heart mind that sends a message to the brain mind that puts you on guard, and then you become alert, and then you start what you would call opening your eye, and it's not just this eye, it is the pineal eye for defense. That is nature in action. Now, when people start respecting the superliminal mind, when they start going into any institution or getting involved with any great body of people, etc., the priesthood, and particularly negative, opportunists, con artists, fakers, all these people with all these different titles that claim to be helping people, they can't hide. This is another reason why you have some. So what appears to be division is not always division in the aspect that you appear on the surface based on what you would think would be unreasoning misunderstanding. No, it is deliberate hostility because they have been exposed. Because the knowledge exposes. See, this is like this. You know how, like, when you teach people the art of the con game, and then the guy down the corner who got the 3-card molly can't play the game on the little children, and the widows and the women trying to raise their children by themselves because their men have been taken away by these same priests in their private prisons, POW camps, who seem like they have nothing to do with it. And they become aware, and they can read them upon sight because they started respecting their divine relationship of the subconscious mind, the superconscious mind, and the conscious mind coming to superliminal consciousness, dealing with the 7 senses in the circle of the head, etc., which is a defense mechanism given to them by nature. So the liberation of humanity is starting to take place regardless of the constructs, artificial, the straws, artificial, the misrepresented dogmas, artificial, the color of office, artificial, the color of law, artificial, the color of authority, artificial, which have been in operation, and the colored philosophies that have been promoted for the benefit of the dark priesthood and people in government and in pseudo religion altogether who have been partnering to enslave humanity. That's why they troll. That's why they are disagreeable. Not because they don't comprehend, understand, overstand. It's because truth is a threat to the corruption that has been operative at Midgard for centuries. So I don't apologize for the truth, and I don't sit around trying to play with these.
Just let me clarify. I really wasn't speaking.
No, I'm implying in general.
Right. So I wasn't.
I know that you're implying in general with some of the comments.
I'm being specific to certain things, but what I'm saying is, this is not the place. This chat platform is not the place for people to come and air the dirty laundry or the issues they have with others. I can respect the fact that people have issues with others. This platform is not for that. This is educational. This is informational. This is inspirational. This is confirmational, not confrontation. Because you can have confrontation. This is just not the platform for that. And I don't mean you can't disagree. I'm saying take your personal disagreements to your own platform, so that the people who want to learn and hear will not have to.
This is for them.
Yeah. Okay. You have something you want to add to that?
So basically, is to get the people cognate of the conscious mind, the operative subconscious mind, and the superconscious mind, because it's part of the necessity for people, or your inbred defense mechanism, so that you don't have to get caught up in the fake psychology of looking for a sacrificial lamb again to come save you, that the savior is within, that your government order of divine operation is within, God is within, and know that, and start trusting your intuitive mind, because much of the solutions for humanity are going to come from people who will become cognate of the superconscious mind and start trusting themselves to pay attention to it. Because there's also the scale of justice. You know, like you see the symbol in astrology of the scale of justice, when you see the
Libra.
Yes, and you see the bandana on her head, on her eyes.
They say it's blind.
Because that's not necessary.
You don't have to see. Yeah.
That's not the seven. Once the seven senses conjoin, then the third eye opens up, and that's true. So they don't want the people to know. See, it's sort of like, you know how like a con artist, priests don't want the people to really know the truth about the Bible, or the history of the Bible, the history of the Quran, the history of Wuaski, the history of the Urantia book, the history of the Torah, the Pentateuch, the Bhagavad Gita, the other books, and the connection of them all in different aspects, and the capacity intellectually to separate the dogmatic introduction of things that are more connotative and less denotative, and therefore the connotative linguistics that is really operative, not by opinion, but by deliberate meetings of people who know these things, who have been controlling the education system to artificially suppress humanity. And so the ignorance of humanity is not by nature, but by them being subjugated to institutions who have been controlled, which have been controlled by the dark priesthood, who they've trusted and thought was bringing them to Jesus, God, Allah, Moses, Muhammad, and to those representative seers and Fatima, etc., and have been misrepresented. Now, that's not a condemnation of the people who have been participants in, and who are still participants in these different orders. It is just to say that those who have not spoken up to clean up have been, what you would say, participants or conspirators by default, for not speaking up for what they know to be the truth, and allow the false concepts to take life and to take root in society, and yet turn around and complain about the negative conditions of people on the planet, and pretend that they're going to go to the different holy books without a real understanding or understanding or comprehension of the origins and the alterations out of the original cultures and the original tongues and customs, and have a better and have a clearer understanding of the books, so that they can operate more clearly at Midgard. No, they deny that. That's why they don't want information out with the public, because it frees them, and they know that all these institutions that they've been drawing finance from the poor successfully with for centuries, that they will no longer have that mental power over the people, for they will be liberated, for they will know more of the truths behind all of these things and know that it's already imprinted in them. And at that point, when they start getting to the subliminal mind, which they're going to get to anyway, that the universe or the cosmos will start downloading on them anyway. And they won't have to go to some school. It will be totally unnecessary. They don't want them to know that either, do they?
I think the school situation is just a...
School's a copy of the womb. Get over it. So what happens when women really wake up in honor? Really? They're going to bring them here already what? Already erudite. Or what you call educated. How about that? Get mad at that. Why do you think the priesthood always suppress women? You think they don't know what I'm talking about right now? Yes, they absolutely do. Why they only tell the people that the Ankh, the symbol of the Ankh, the holy cross of the womb, only means generation and regeneration? Only. Why don't they go further? Do they not want women to know the power of the womb, that if they would stop dealing with these dogma systems, that the power with bringing champions to the earth already exists with them? You want to solve the problems of the planet? Respect your womb. For real, not some moral appeal and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Start knowing yourself for real. And stop using sex as a sport. And begin to really have a comprehension of the use of the moon and the cycles of the moon. They told you is evil.
Let me share something.
Please do.
This from How to Live Large on a Small Planet.
Mm-hmm.
And this is based on, and this is called the chapter heading is Islands of Light. And it says many of us have a deep yearning to live together in conscious oneness, which is true. Mm-hmm. This yearning to live in a sacred community of kindred spirits to create a new, larger, and I use the word family, based on love and oneness is embedded deep within our cellular memory banks. It is something we have carried within us for a long, long time. It is one of our most precious dreams. Over the years, numerous communities have been established with these goals in mind, yet most, if not all of them, have failed. There have been spiritual, religious, alternative, and hippie communities which have tried to create something new, but always there was the intrusion of duality, which kept them from achieving their goal. So it talks about we have to get from, out of duality into oneness in order.
Well, this is what it is. A cognizance of it, what it is. Now let's look. Having the priesthood under the guise of the political platform created doctrines, written doctrines, and operations that actually have been pitting men and women against each other. Mm-hmm. Marriage, which has been misrepresented totally, which is why they don't talk about matrimony. Marriage has been a tool of the priesthood to pit men and women against each other and sell themselves to one another. And the corporate state, operated by the priesthood and members of the Roman Curia, have always controlled the union and the divorce to steal their estates and always put things in place that end up destroying the marriages in the first place so that the estates can be stolen. And men and women have been traditionally doing what? Fighting each other and often starting to build beautiful lives together, beautiful homes, and within a 3-year cycle, they're at each other's throat trying to steal each other's estate. Now tell me that's not the practice. It is the practice. But knowing that that comes from the priesthood of Rome in its origin and the Circle Church and Chancery, Fleet Street, England, controlling the judicial system and estates, i.e. Chancery Court. Yeah, right. Is it any wonder why they don't want you to start thinking from your intuitive mind? Yes, it is. Once you start knowing and rejecting them and stop dealing with them, stop bringing them into your life, and stop making contracts with them and those who follow them, course, they're going to be disagreeable with us, aren't they? Yeah, because they're parasites, all of them.
Here's a question for you from Jeff. What does Grand Sheik think about all of the news about UFOs as of late, and how does it affect us Moors? Are they related to us?
As of late, it always have been. Let's get over that too. There's never been the now. It has always been. It's not new. It's just been hidden. And you're going to have to communicate with many others from the intuitive mind. There's another reason why we're talking about this, because you're going to be facing it anyway. So that those who've been enslaving you and enslaving humanity can't use it as a weapon against you, because they're going to do that too.
The truth of the matter is there are benevolent as well as malevolent.
Isn't it positive, negative, everything?
Right.
All right.
So
what is one of the reasons why some things have not been open to us is because we've been pretty much exercising all of our institutions and our thought processes in the lower self.
And so in the third dimension.
Exactly. And so not being cognizant of other planes of life, we have not been exercising the mind that qualifies us on those communication levels. And we have been garnered, or what you call geared to exercise what you would call the three lower chakras, which is also why the sex is a sport. And that's the only place where we look for happiness, not finding it, limiting ourselves. And it's been used against us, which is why most of us find ourselves in this cycle of looking for the elusive butterfly of love and getting frustrated because we don't find it, because we have limited understanding or comprehension of the reality of our being, including the superconscious mind. And so we limit ourselves only to the carnal realms of the third degree, or what you would call the three-dimensional world.
One of the issues with finding love, I see, is that we fail to love ourselves first.
Of course, but we don't know ourselves.
Right. So when you can't, won't, take time to love and love yourself, it is impossible for you to find something or someone outside of you to make you complete, because you first got to find that love, that wholeness, that oneness in you.
Now let's look at the fact. Remember, when you begin to study this, and it's not that we're not responsible for that, because we are. However, the priesthood has been deliberately suppressing certain aspects of the human experience in order to put us in darkness, or to keep us in darkness. As an example, all scholars around the world, some will admit, some will not, but upon examination, you will find it to be true, that the hybrid Europeans of the priesthood, after the takeover of the Vatican by representatives for and Napoleon, etc., have set the world back, knowledge-wise, discipline-wise, information-wise. At least minimally, they will admit to at least 500 years, but the fact is known at least 1200. Therefore, those who are operating government in their de facto platforms are operating at least minimally 300 years technologically ahead of the masses, and they've been using it negatively and for selfish purposes. And logically, they don't want the people to start operating in their superconscious mind, because you won't need them to teach you. You will start attaching yourself electrically to the cosmic mother, or the Akashic record, or to the cosmic mother by nature, i.e. fifth dimensional ascension. Not a place to go, state of mind. How about that?
Here's a question from Tiffany Conway. Salam family, I'm joining you from Guyana, South America. We are in the process of nationalizing and would like to know where we fit in the Moorish family.
You fit in just like you do here. Once you understand, if you have available to you Circle 7 Quran of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, go to chapter 47 and understand the biblical principle of the Superdevere, of the dividing of the land between Ham and Cush, and you'll find out that you're Cushites. You're already Moorish. It's not something to come to. something to become aware of. Self. You're already home, Dorothy. Now you understand the Wizard of Oz? Not a place to go. You're already home. You just become cognate in the area where you are, with people where you are, and start shedding the misrepresented information relative to governments and nations promoted by Rome, who conquered us. Get over it. It's sort of like the difficulty for many people when they become aware of some of this information is thinking they have to come to us type thing, or come in another area and you're already home. You need to promote the knowledge because it's already there. As a matter of fact, in Guatemala, etc., in other areas, more evidence is actually there that gives the old history than it is been exposed up here. That's the truth. You just need to recognize it. It's all around you. Re-embrace it in the proper concept, morally and ethically, though, outside of the fake political paradigms that have been promoted. And you'll also understand why the hybrid Europeans have been controlledly misrepresenting the OAS, or the Organization of the American States, and also why they've been misrepresenting their private corporation as America the country, when you know and the world knows that America is the continent from the northern hemisphere of Midgard to the central equator to the southern hemisphere of Midgard, comprising America, of whom you are. And America is a dialectical adjustment of Al-Moroccan. You're already a Moor. You can't become it. You already are. Now you must know the distinction between the Aboriginal people, distinguished from the hybrid European Germanic tribes who have been conquering us under the guise of the Spanish Inquisition, the Roman Inquisition, and the colonial operations from England under the fake dynamics of the so-called Columbus era, which is not a man, but an era of political operations.
Yeah. Speaking of Columbus not being a man, I mean, we were listening to Dane Calloway's his latest
many
film.
props to Dane.
Yeah, regarding the fictionalization of the creation of the story of Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner, which is, at first glance or thought, you might go, oh, that has to be true because there's all of this information and all of this documentation out there of and even, I've looked at something and they were the places where they say they were, where she was. It's right here in Wilmington, right on, with the
Baltimore
area, and the different, so places, Philly and stuff like that. But when we realize how much of a theater that we have been subjected to, we've been played almost
still hiding the history.
Everything that we thought it just happened when they did the War of the Worlds. It has been happening for hundreds and hundreds of years before that. And so it makes sense that creation would happen, of this fictionalization of the revolt, the rebellion, and the Underground Railroad and all these things, because it facilitated I guess what eventually became the what they call expatriation of our people to West Africa from here.
Yeah. Oh, even when you read the congressional records about Senator Balboa and the creation of Liberia in order to support the reconstructed history, to make the people think they came from the east side, while we did is before the great earthquake. Point. In order for them to steal the land, which is problematic, which is also why they call the capital of Liberia Monrovia. Yeah, you need to understand all those dynamics, all those choices.
They became what's called Immigrants.
North America is Northwest Africa.
Right.
Central America, Central, Old Mexum, Old Mex, and you'll see Dane recognizes that he's Old Mex. Old Mexum. We know that, but it's no big secret. It's sort of like people, the truth, and I comprehend that it does. It makes people uncomfortable because they don't want to accept that they've been had. Because we like to refer to ourselves as being insightfully spiritual. And we've been played. Get over it. Remove your ego. Start recognizing you've been conquered. Honor your mothers and fathers for real. And start getting back to the state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers. And understand that you're heirs of Midgard. And Midgard is the name of this particular earth. This particular firmament is Midgard. Get over it. You've just been contaminated. And you've been busy worshiping idol gods, and you've been played, and you've been robbed. Over it. We can get out of it. You know, respect your higher self. Know of your higher self, and know of your lower self, and seek the higher planes of life. They've always been available to you. You've been rejecting them. And that's the division, Dr. Naila. People really not willing to accept that our concepts have been wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The fact of this continued failure in our communities is your proof that we haven't had the truth. Because we certainly hadn't been free. With all this worship we've been doing all over the place, acting like fools on our own land, don't even know that we're on our own land. And then mocking us at every turn, including the Mummers Parade in Philadelphia, city of brotherly love.
And they've added in sisterly affection.
Yeah, we're pulling it. Including the capacity of them in the late 1800s to transfer the legitimate Capitolium under treaty and constitution from the territories that you know as Shakamoxum to an area of man, you will, and of man, 10 square miles at the 7 hills that Polk gave to them to establish a throne for the Roman goddess Columbia, and have been ruling the world with war from the 7 hills of Rome, which you know is Washington District of Columbia. Don't pretend y'all don't know that.
There was a question, and I've seen it a couple of times, but the question, it's just come up a few times about whether or not we should be signing or writing in lowercase or
the capital principle is really the grammatical deliberate indication of unum sanctum ownership by putting in the written form the living in all capital letters, which is known as the man of straw, or the straw man, etc. Which is why, as an example, if you look in an unabridged dictionary and you look at, as an example, let me show you, say more as an example.
I think what they're asking, though, just for clarity, whether it should be all lowercase.
Yeah. Listen. The real deal is understand what its function is.
Okay.
You understand? The function is a claim of a dead estate. You know, you must know what its function is.
Mm-hmm.
And when you agree to it or don't challenge it, if you get the point,
mm-hmm.
that's an implied acceptance of abandonment of a state. And of course, because they are vampires, recessive, that they are claiming it and therefore claiming it for own, etc. That is its function of the Dom Nagir. And of course, you would not write your appellation in all capital letters because that would be an agreement that you are dead and they're claiming your estate. And this is also why they reclaim the estate under what you would call admiralty or maritime law or law of the seas or piracies, and the privateering of the foot soldiers for Rome, i.e., which would be the barristers, accredited registry of Fleet Street, England, of the Circle Church and the Chancery, and why all claimed estates are delegated in what you call ecclesiastical and chancery court of England. This is why the chancery operators of the bar operate all judicial platforms in the West, or what you would call the judicial platform via Fleet Street, England. And this is again why they transferred the Capitolium to Washington, D.C. And of course, this is all of the estates, marriage certificates, and birth certificates. And most people just talk about the birth certificates. They don't talk about the marriage certificates, where they claim ownership of the womb and claim that the mothers, which is the gateway